Thank you very much. Great to see you again. Hi, everybody. I'm going to stay down because I'll be out chatting with some of you. Thank you all so much for taking the time and hanging out and speaking. And what I took from that more than anything is we all get to go home with some heroin. So it's going to be a great day for all of us, isn't it? And it's funny, I was thinking, I think I've talked to all of you at some point. Hello. I've talked to all of these folks at some point. One of the things, I have an if question for all of you. You don't all have to answer it. I'm going to start it. But if you have any questions, wave your hand around, and either Adam or myself will run around and find you, and then we'll get you to throw these in. These aren't meant to be just my questions. They're all of you. But my question for whichever ones of you want to jump in on this. If you could live anywhere in the world, why the hell Calgary? And I ask that because I think of that a lot. If you're successful, there's a joke that says people from Saskatchewan move to Calgary to make enough money to retire in Victoria. And that's the joke. But there's something underneath that people think Calgary's where you come to make your money to get out. But these people here, all of you could be working anywhere. David, you could be working in New York doing what you do. All of you could be doing the research you're doing, Spruce Meadows stuff. All of that stuff doesn't have to happen in Calgary. As a matter of fact, Spruce Meadows, as you showed, was nothing. And now it's the place in the world. What is it here? Now, I'm asking you guys that, but I'm curious to not get the cute answer. I don't want the answer that people say, well, you know, Calgarians have that can-do spirit, or whatever it is that you want to say. But what is it when you say, okay, this is actually why I'm here? What would that be? Any one of you want to jump in? Curtis, if you want to jump in, or any of you. What would you say, why am I here in Calgary?
Well, I love the mountains. You know, it's easy to get to the mountains. There's the Calgary International Airport. You know, you can travel anywhere in the world easily. We get 4 seasons, so you don't lure into this complacency of, you know, same weather all the time. You appreciate, you know, winter when it's just around the corner, and you appreciate summer. So it's a great place to be. Love it.
Too short a summer.
Too short. Summer could be a little longer.
I ask myself, actually, just so recently, I've asked myself that a lot, like, why am I here still? I have a lot of people saying you should be in Montreal, Toronto, New York, and things like that. And it's a really tough every month question now at where I'm at with my career and stuff. Calgary is a big city, but it's a small town. And it's sprawled out huge. But what keeps me and has kept me here has been my family. I'm really close to my parents and my friends. And I think the people of Calgary. I mean, Toronto doesn't have the beautiful mountains like Greg was saying here, but there is a beautiful side to it, and there's also that side that is financial, where it's like there's a great economy here. And as an artist, it's really important to be in a place that you're loved and appreciated, and where you have a good base. But it's always a question of what city else, like what else would there be out there?
Curtis?
I do energy research, and so I wanted to come to the center of the world in terms of I wanted to come to the energy hub of the world, and that's why I wanted to come back home.
And does that work? Like if you're saying, I mean, I could see someone saying, I'm here in the oil and gas energy because I'm in oil and gas. You're not. How does that work to be here for that?
It's certainly a bit of a challenge in terms of getting attention, especially in the area of photovoltaics. But the other half of our story is generating hydrogen. And right now, Alberta is the largest consumer of hydrogen in North America. And so in many ways, I think we're actually going to be able to make a very positive contribution just in our research in making clean hydrogen.
Linda, you could live anywhere in the world. You literally could. You can say, Mom, builder, build me a house, and they could, because you could do that. But you're here, and you're working. Why?
Well, Calgary's home. I mean, that would be the basis. But I think that it's, I mean, look at these amazing people. And so I don't want to go with your answer on the can-do spirit, but there are some pretty amazing people in Calgary, and it's home.
Doctor, feel good?
So I remember May 25th, 1987. I was a grad student in Toronto, and I opened up the Toronto Sun, and it was a story about how Calgary had this massive snowstorm in the middle of this beautiful spring day in Toronto. And my first thought was, what a bunch of losers, right? and that was 8 years before coming here, and so that's sort of tongue-in-cheek. I guess the other tongue-in-cheek thing is it's not, as I mentioned, this isn't a region that is known presently to have a pharmaceutical industry. I think that's something that could and maybe even should change. But people will often ask, will opium poppy grow in Alberta? And the answer is yes, it'll grow very well. In fact, it did at one time during the Second World War. This was a site for the cultivation of the plant to produce morphine for the war effort. So again, I'm asked that kind of question, is this something that has relevance here? And my answer is, well, there's a lot actually in common between Alberta and Afghanistan. So it's cold in the winters, it's hot and dry in the summers, and the farmers all have guns. So that, again, all that aside, why have I stayed, and why am I not going anywhere? It's a sense of community here. Right? So the city is big enough to do anything that you want to do, but still small enough to feel like you're part of something.
Are there questions here? I can't see as easily because I'm a little blinded, so you may have
Throw
to
up a
wave.
hand. I'll walk. Dave or I will walk over.
Okay, so wave if you have something. Adam will come and find you. There's one right here. Adam, which is actually closer to me, but I just wanted to see you
Doing
run.
my
so-
Donahue. Doing my Donahue
Yeah,
here.
excellent job.
You rest, Dave. I wouldn't want to exert
I'm
yourself
exhausted.
there.
I've asked the whole question already.
Hi. So my question's for Linda. At one point you made a comment to the effect about the school children, and you said that of your spectators, it's now 34% that have that recollection. As of what year?
Oh, we do surveys every 2 years, and so that originally started in about 10 years after we started the venue, so say about 1985, and ever since then, it's grown. It used to be about 20, but obviously the population has grown. So.
If you haven't been to Spruce Meadows, and I know many of you have, I'm always amazed, and this is going to apply to all of you, I'm always amazed with how much work, and you talked about atmosphere, how much work goes into making sure you feel what you need people to feel. So the music that's played through the speakers when you walk in, the fact that it's green, how it is to park, how the volunteers who are involved, everything about it is about how you feel when you're there. And I'm curious for all of you guys, you're all driven people, you're all successful people. A lot of people say that that's about emotion. So how do you handle negative self-talk? You talk about that with setting records. That's a huge deal in triathlons or in Harvard, both of which are very difficult to do. That handling your own moods, handling your own negative self-talk is a key. Any successful person I've ever known all talks about how do they do that how do they get their head into the right space. Let's start at this end and move down. Tell us, Doctor, what is it that you say when research just isn't exciting you and you realize you're leading away and people are looking to you for leadership? How do you get your emotions into the right place?
Well, I think one of the things about a research career is that you have to be prepared for criticism, especially if you're doing something that's cutting against the grain. And if you're not prepared to take criticism and to find motivation on a daily basis to overcome that, then it's probably not the right career for you. So it's finding the right balance between, on the one hand, being empathetic with everyone's concerns, but on the other hand, pursuing what you believe to be the right thing to do and coping with the criticism that you're going to face on a regular basis, and staying sane while all of that is going on, which hasn't worked for me, but as you can tell. But I can say it anyway.
Linda?
I think critique is very important. It's vitally important because it gives you the tools to improve. And so I think it's a very positive tool, even though it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
But I also think that one of our family members, one of the builders, says you have one night to cheer your success and you have one night to bleed your loss. And so when you get up in the morning, you have to go back to the foundation of what you're doing, and because they're the principles that guide you going forward.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm going to echo your comments, and I'd say the major challenge that I'm faced with in my career at this particular stage is just basically trying to get money to do our research. And the way it works in my line of work is we submit grants and it gets reviewed by my colleagues in the field, and then they proceed to tell me that those ideas are completely stupid and will never work. And I've been told that for every single unique idea we've had so far, and but I really believed in it. You know, I certainly took the criticism and I tried to see if we could make a better product that way, but they just didn't have the same vision for it, but I really believed in it, and we pushed forward with it. And as a result, we now have 5 different patents. We have a startup company, and so, you know, things have worked out.
That's awesome. Greg?
You know, I think that sometimes when the times get rough and you start questioning yourself, you just have to kind of shut off the emotions and trust in yourself and just trust in the process and just take that next step. You know, stop looking way off into the future at what you're trying to accomplish, because sometimes it just seems impossible, right? I mean, just impossible. So instead, just focus on the next step and trust in the process and just use your brain.
Great.
Opium. No. In all honesty, negative self-talk is unreal as an artist. You're constantly criticizing yourself. And I said years ago, no one can beat me down as hard as I can. And it's just phenomenal to, I'm sure it is with anyone, just to look at it and go, whoa. So the greatest gifts that I've seen in my life has been friends and family and humility. Those things are huge. Staying humble before your craft, but also showing yourself grace. You need to show yourself grace and learn that the mistake sometimes is actually the work. And it's just phenomenal. So I think constantly, as I was saying earlier, being in an information stage, learning all the time, allows me to get over that negative self-talk. And I mean, thank goodness for the iPhone and being able to text somebody or call someone up and say, good God, why am I doing this and what's happening? Because friends and family are key. Community was spoken of, and I think Calgary's got a beautiful community. So that's what I'd say would help a lot.
Right. Question right here, Dave.
The Globe and Mail and a number of other publications have really been talking about how Canadians have a chance to improve our productivity and really look at the areas of research and innovation. Are there things that you can point to that we as a Calgary can do to improve in that area? Whether it's small things each individual person can do, or are there things like, obviously I work for a sponsor company, that corporate Calgary should be doing to help out?
And specifically in the area of innovation, am I getting that right for these folks?
Innovation and research on how we can become leaders. I mean, we've had someone talk about pharmaceutical industry, that Alberta doesn't really have one. How could we grow that? I mean, solar power, how can we do better? I mean...
Okay,
Curtis, go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about my views on the innovation gap that we have in Canada right now. And I'll go beyond Calgary in my answer, but I will, like I said before, in my business, how we get funding for our research comes through federal agencies. And the problem right now in Canada is that for me to be able to qualify for any of these grants, I have to have an industry sponsor. Well, if you're in the business of trying to create an industry, there's no industry there to actually sponsor your research. And so it comes back to the chicken and the egg thing. How am I supposed to be able to train our future leaders to be able to go into industry, create this new high-tech sector, if I actually need somebody that's already in that sector in Canada to sponsor that? And for me, it's actually quite frustrating. And before I leave this particular answer, I would say the reason I've been able to reach the success that I've had is because, I know Alberta takes it on the chin all the time, but it's because of our provincial funding agency has actually funded my fundamental research program, and they took a chance on it, and as a result of it, they're going to be getting huge, huge payback, I believe.
Jump in, Peter.
Yeah, so I mean, that's interesting that your funding source has been primarily more regional, because mine has been federal. And until recently, the province actually hasn't invested all that much money in the work that we're doing. The federal government has been, I guess, a much more supportive, although, you know, to be fair, it's starting to it's starting to emerge. I mean, any researcher will tell you that what they're doing is the most important thing in the world, and I'm not going to be any exception to that. You know, I think that there's great opportunity, but that opportunity requires, as Curtis says, the right partners. And if the motivation within the city or within the province or the region is not to pick up on a few areas and identify those as target areas that need to be supported, money certainly drives things, but the money and the support that comes from it and the building on what is already in place is what's going to bring more high-quality researchers. It's what's going to bring more trainees to the region and to the university. And you know, in our area, there's actually a lot of strength at the University of Calgary. So it's not just drugs; it's anything that plants make. So you know, all of you have been imbibing on plant products, even if you haven't been over in the back here chewing on the opium poppy heads. You know, you've had a cup of coffee and there's chemicals in there, as you know, like caffeine. And you've been eating fruit and all the flavors and the aromas and colors and so on. These are all plant products. And there's great opportunity to capitalize on those things. But all that we can do as researchers is to do what we know how to do, and that's the research. The business end of things, we rely on partners, and there are some partners in the city, but I think that that's something that there's immense expertise in this city for building those kinds of companies, and it's something that I think is moving in the right direction towards creating those opportunities. But it's a very important part of going from being world-class, where you're known within the scientific community, to being world-class where you actually have an opportunity to make an economic impact. And many of us certainly are working on things that have that potential, but there's that gap between where we know we can go and actually getting there.
And Greg, as a business guy, is not part of the challenge, and maybe you guys can also jump in, it would seem to me part of the challenge there is research doesn't necessarily make money. You can't guarantee that in the next 5 years of research there, ka-ching, we now have money. So you have to be willing to lose that. What's the business model in
Well,
there, Greg?
I mean, for business it's different because we can seek venture capital and we can go around the world to find the venture capital for that. And if you've got a good model, a good business plan, a good idea, which includes the research, you know, that you need to do, I think you can find the capital to do that. You know.
Your sense, yeah, Linda.
I think that I think this forum is a great start because for the researchers, that's what they're doing is they're researching. It's not very easy for them to go out into the public to raise the funds. And so I think a forum like this, I feel actually badly for the researchers. There isn't 10,000 people here watching because I believe that most of the crowd would want to invest and participate in what people are talking about today.
Wouldn't it be great if Calgary and Alberta were the energy innovator, not just the producer? Where are you, Adam? There you go.
Here, Dave.
Thank you for an inspiring morning so far. I'm contemplating a grad degree, and I'm just wondering from each of you, where did the curiosity gene or the if gene come from? Were you born with it? Was it a specific moment in time, a role model? Or perhaps was it someone who said you couldn't do something and you wanted to prove yourself right?
That's an easy, light, fluffy question. You got 20 seconds each. Get on it.
Well, so I mean, I completely agree with the sentiment that you should never grow up. You know, that's one of the things that's attractive about an academic career is that in a lot of ways you don't have to. If you were born with that curiosity, which I think many more people than will admit it are, and you're just brave enough to pursue it and not ever want to grow up. Feel like, you know, I'm like a kid in a playground every day for the most part, and I can break the rules and I can make excuses to people for why I did it and get away with it much easier than I could if I was working for a company, a real company in a way. So yeah, I think curiosity is inherent but needs to be nurtured.
Yeah, should you get a degree? Master's? Yes. You could ask the same question again, and I could say no. It's just choice, and the way I look at it is curiosity. I mean, my toy when I was a kid was a Curious George doll. I had the thing shredded apart in like 3 months. I don't know. It's had no eyes and no nose and whatever. Curiosity has always sparked me, and this like zest for life, and it's taken me to places that are treacherous and that are unbelievable and that are scary and exciting and all these places. And I think unearthing, again, using the word passion, unearthing passion in you, it keeps me a kid. Learning is never a bad thing. Academics and getting into school is something that I didn't pursue at this level. But when I look at classic education and I look at the broad scope of it, whether you learned language and culture and history and all these things, that you apply yourself to it all. You could get a master's degree or you could read 100 books, but just, you'll know what's right. Just listen. It'll be good, I think.
Can I rebuttal on that? Because, I mean, here's the thing I say. People say, well, just follow your gut. And this has always been my curiosity. I think there's a great line in High Fidelity, the movie, where the guy says, follow my gut. The thing I realized after a while is my gut is full of shit. But the point there, and I say that somewhat jokingly, but I think it's always that thing. What is your passion? And it's tricky to find. It's not like someone says, "Get-doing, there's your passion." It's a little harder to find that, isn't it, Greg?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never really had that issue, and I've always known what it is that I want. Mm-hmm. And I think for a lot of people, they kind of know what that is. And I think what it is maybe they're just afraid, right, to take that next step, to go ahead and do it. And you don't really think about what are the costs of taking that step. And I don't think we analyze those costs appropriately. I don't think it's as difficult as you might think it is. Really? If fear of failure is one of the reasons why we don't want to take that step. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Great. Yep.
The gut thing. I live by my gut, and it made me survive Thailand. And I never got into trouble there. My friends did, and I skipped it all. But I think in pursuing that thing, like at the end of my talk here, I said there's all these small ifs. Try a small if. Just do that. That's all I ask. The guy that climbed Mount Everest never started by going like, ha-ha, and up he went. No, he died. He climbed a little hill, then he climbed a mountain. And the guy that, that does what these wonderful people do. You don't start cycling 20 kilometers a day. So just take the little things, and it's a lesson to be learned in all things. It seems amateur, it seems childish, it seems, I'm a pretty smart person, I'm an adult here, I do quite well for myself. How can I do a little step? Take a little step, and humble yourself to learn like a child again. And that's probably the best way, because your gut can throw you off sometimes, and if it does, what did you say that quote was? 10,000 mistakes is just 10,000 ways of... Yeah.
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison. There you go.
I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work, and that's,
Perspective. It's huge.
Start finding those 10,000 ways.
Get at it as soon as you can.
Get on that, yeah. There's a lot of them.
One more from Adam.
So time for one last question.
So I asked this question at the last IF series, and it's inspired and influenced our work with children. So I ask it everywhere I go now, and I ask of you, what role has reading played in your life?
Reading?
What role has reading played in your life? David?
It's great. I vividly remember The Hobbit and seeing the forests and seeing these big, huge stone guys. And I think reading actual books, I love books. But I mostly read books that inspire the human spirit and that are about people's lives and that draw that out or that challenge me. And I think reading has awakened my mind in a way that so many other things cannot. And it's something that I would suggest to anyone. Sadly, it's just by the flip of an iPad now, and the Word is the greatest thing.
Greg?
Unfortunately, I didn't read much when I was a kid, and it's too bad. And we encourage our kids to read now. They read a lot, and both my wife and I read a ton, and I like the Kindle. Yeah. So I love reading. It introduces new ideas to you, new areas of pursuit, and inspires. I definitely encourage kids to read.
I read a lot up until the 7th grade, and it was around that point that school didn't become very challenging to me, and so that's when I got very engaged in hockey. And it wasn't until, again, the 3rd year of my undergraduate studies that I found something that I was really passionate about. And it was at that point I started reading in a very major way, and that's carried through with my career up to this point. I probably spend 4 or 5 hours a day just reading. And then at the end of the day, reading really helps me put me to sleep, because I now have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old at home, and so after dinner I sit down and the whole goal is to put them to sleep, but Daddy's usually the first one snoring.
I would come at it from a different side. Of course, I read a lot as well, but I have a son who's a non-reader, and the biggest challenge has been reading is very important, but does it really matter whether they do it through their eyes and take the information in? I would say no. As long as they read, whether it's with headphones or another way to read, I think is very important. And sometimes we have a stigmatism about reading has to be like this, and it doesn't.
Perfect. Thanks.
That's a good point.
Yeah, reading. I mean, when your business is about information and learning what other people are doing, you're reading all the time. But it's these very formulaic scientific articles, and then you have to write in sort of the same style. So, I honestly, I haven't read a novel for several years, and I guess when I'm reading all the time, but I'm always looking for more information. And I think one of the things that's happened in the world lately is that information availability has become so much more accessible. So you can go to the source of all knowledge now, Wikipedia, and you can find out anything you want. You can click from one link to another, and it's basically just junk food, right? But it's in a way, you're reading, but it's not reading. I know there's something missing in that kind of information. You're missing the emotions and the feelings that an author would add into a novel or a book, for example. But that's it's kind of almost overload these days, the amount of information that we have to take in and then assimilate and turn around, where it detracts from the ability to just enjoy a book for the sake of what the intent of that author was.
There are so many more questions, and that's why we've created lunch breaks, and we're going to take that in a little bit, not right away, because I want you to meet 3 other people first. But I'd love to find out from you guys, and you can ask them later, about who was their inspiration, or what is the thing that they read that moved them, or if I could subscribe to one magazine, what would that be? Or if I could buy a book, what would that be? Or if I had $1 million and you had to spend it in the next 3 days on Calgary, what would you spend that for? There's a lot of great questions, so that's all. We'll keep those in our heads for the lunch break. Can we give these guests a big round of applause and thank them so much? Thank you very much, Peter, and Linda, and Curtis, and Greg, and Dave. Thank you, guys.